Hello, welcome to Network. My name is Pumela Lezondi with your technology and social media news. SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. This week, our Twitter poll is asking you where you are watching your movies. Is it streaming platforms or is it the cinema? As Apple is saying that they will be producing movies for the cinema now. Results of that are coming up later in the program. Here's what's coming up in this episode. We have details on some technology that could help when it comes to load shedding, and we ask whether load shedding is not affecting South Africa's 4IR. We look at some water technology, and our conversation is about the link between the recent shutdown and social media. While other countries are already discussing technology 5.0, South Africa has been discussing the fourth industrial revolution, which we are currently in at the moment. But what kind of 4IR are we in if there are so many power cuts, and how do those power cuts affect the current technology revolution, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs? South Africa is the continent's most industrialized economy, yet the country has been experiencing the worst power cuts in its history. And just about everyone who runs any kind of business has been feeling it in one way or another. Those who rely on technology always need electricity for things not to completely stop. This includes farmers.
You need 2 or 3 cycles. The 3 have a certain need for water, and you need a certain amount of hours in a week from Monday to Sunday. And with phase 3 to 6 load shedding, it's impossible.
If load shedding keeps continuing, I think in this area, we'll lose our livelihoods. It's impossible to farm like this. To farm half the amount of seedlings in season when you're supplying supermarkets.
This vineyard in Paarl in the Western Cape has installed a solar power solution in order for it to continue operating. But not every business can afford to install them. This car wash in Alexandra, just outside Johannesburg, says it's a struggle every day. They can't even operate a technology as basic as their compressor machines when load shedding arrives.
We're not that rich. We can't just buy solar system, then we put them on top of the roofs and etc. The money, that's the problem.
When COVID-19 lockdowns arrived, South Africa proved to have a massive digital divide. The visible technology gap is right in the middle of the country's leaders talking about how they want everyone not to be left behind by the fourth industrial revolution. But current power cuts seem to be a massive hindrance in all of this.
South Africa is part of the digital economy. As such, the digital economy relies heavily on digital equipment, with all the infrastructure powered by electricity, which requires clean 24 hours uninterrupted power supply. All your 4IR technologies, cloud computing, private and public, edge computing, robotics, IoT, and all the others have a high power usage. And for them to work effectively and efficiently, we need 24 hours, again, clean electrical power supply for them to work. So is it a hindrance? Yes, most definitely, with the load shedding, blackouts, burnouts that we are having.
As with everything else, it seems renewable energy technologies are currently benefiting only those who can afford them in a country that has been repeatedly said to have the biggest inequalities in the world. While there is a struggle with load shedding, this is for some businesses to try and find solutions, and many are going solar.
Heineken South Africa's commitment towards carbon neutrality is that we would like the brewery to be carbon neutral by 2025, and we would like to get our entire supply chain carbon neutral by 2030. Solar PPA is a long-term agreement, which means you really need a good partner, and Solar was critical to us because they came with the best proposal in terms of technology, but they also had a good footprint in terms of other installations and financial backing. If we talk about breweries in the Africa region, this is definitely quite a significant plant.
This plant provides us with an opportunity to mix our energy. A bulk of our energy used in the brewery is now going to be derived from the sun.
I think going closer to the community taught us a very good lesson that actually this kind of projects, they are more needed in South Africa.
We have to approach load shedding from every perspective, and it's so important for stakeholders to come in, offer the alternatives, and we're already hearing lots of noise from government coming in about solar and alternative, and we're using wind, and we're using a whole plethora of different technologies to create electricity, and that's the approach we have to take as a country just to get us out. And I am quite confident that with all these efforts that are being made, that in the next decade, within this next decade, I honestly think that we're going to have an excess of power and load shedding will be a thing of the past.
People are going to be more independent instead of depending on the government to actually provide us with electricity. By doing that, it also gives us an opportunity to actually provide the earth to actually heal, because now we're no longer using coal, we're not longer releasing fossil energy out there, so we're using more energy, more of the sun, so it gives the earth time to heal also. So that's why renewable energy is the way forward when you look into the future.
It's been National Water Week, and we do know that South Africa has had a few problems with water, but some of those problems can be solved with technology as well.
As the world marked World Water Day on the 22nd of March, the United Nations highlighted the global water challenges at the water conference that opened in New York last Wednesday.
We are draining humanity's lifeblood through vampiric overconsumption and unsustainable use, and evaporating it through global eating. We've broken the water cycle, destroyed ecosystems, and contaminated groundwater. Nearly 3 out of 4 natural disasters are linked to water. 1 in 4 people lives without safely managed water services or clean drinking water. And over 1.7 billion people lack basic sanitation.
While some of the reasons cited for global water issues include climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, here in South Africa, aging infrastructure and load shedding are partly to blame. In De Aar, a small town in the Northern Cape, residents shared frustrations caused by water scarcity in their community.
Ons weet niks, ons sien maar net die teppe kom nie meer water uit nie. Ons weet nie hoe om dat ons weet nie waaroor gaan dit nie. Baie moeilik. 'n Mens kan nog nooit leef sonder water nie.
Ons lewe maar van die George of water. Ons het nie 'n ander manier nie. Soms moet ons 'n distansie loop, dan gaan skep ons die straat water. En dit is ook 'n distansie want ons het nie eens 'n krywe. Om te kan sien, ons kan 'n krywe vat om kan vol te maak. Dat ons met water het.
Even in the morning, kids can't wash themselves to go to school. They always go to school. You can see even they are not in their good standard to go to school because of this problem of water.
However, emerging technology solutions like this water purifying sachet give a glimpse of hope in the fight for water security.
You know, I think the issue to access to clean water is one that should be at the forefront of all of our minds, not just now when we have a cholera outbreak. I think there are communities around South Africa that are still struggling with access to clean water. And the purifier of water technology, what it does is that it's a simple sachet, and you put it into dirty water, and through the technology it takes away the contaminated aspects of the water, leaving behind the clean water, giving an opportunity to a lot of people to have access to clean water to be able to drink.
In the Western Cape, organization Save Our Schools is assisting the Blue Kombos community save water by using water harvesting technology.
What we will be implementing are rainwater harvesting towers, and they will consist of almost like it is like an upside down umbrella on a large scale. It has a very fine mesh within the upside down umbrella, which when the rain comes down, it just protects it and filters it from anything that's nasty in there, like bird poop or whatever. Then it comes down into the mast of the rainwater harvesting tower, and then each rainwater harvesting tower will be connected by aerial poles so that if their tank is full, it can then push the rainwater through to another tank. So we try not to lose any of that at all.
According to the World Economic Forum, by 2030, the global demand for water will exceed sustainable supply by an alarming 40%. They also say that the problem be addressed and immediate and innovative solutions must be brought forward to combat this crisis.
SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, News Network at sabc.co.za on email. After the break, we chat about the role played by social media when it comes to protest action, as we do know that there was a shutdown here in South Africa recently. It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Welcome back. Now, the recent shutdown in South Africa was largely organized on social media, and some people were looking at its success based on perhaps the conversation that was taking place online, and maybe it could also have been whether the conversation online spilled over to the numbers that participated on the ground on the day the shutdown was supposed to happen. And now to talk to us more about the effectiveness of social media when it comes to these things is Professor Ed Mahamara. He is from the University of Johannesburg. Prof. Murray, hello, and thank you very much for being a part of our network. How effective is social media when it comes to organizing action such as the recent shutdown that took place in South Africa?
I think we've seen that it's something that is really useful. I think in Africa generally we've seen, I think even if you look back as far as the Arab Spring around 2010, 2011, you could see that already social media was already being used. And now if you can actually see the numbers in terms of users of WhatsApp and also, for example, Facebook, Twitter has also grown exponentially in most African countries. And I think that demonstrates that there is an appetite to use these platforms to discuss politics, but also to discuss just general issues. But what we've also seen is that in some environments, especially those that are very restrictive, people are very afraid to discuss some of these things. But over and above everything, you can actually begin to see that social media is actually being used to discuss issues that are of concern to the general public.
Prof, you speak about the Arab Spring, but beyond the Arab Spring, because that's been used as an example the world over of social media that led to people going to the streets to eventually bringing down governments and presidents resigning. But beyond that, have we seen similar successes?
I think we've seen it in so many countries. I think one example is this flag movement in Zimbabwe, which was led by Evan Mawari around 2016, 2017, and also 2018. We also saw during COVID, there was the hashtag Zimbabwean Lives Matter, where this was also used very extensively, and actually it ended up actually moving from being an online discussion to actually going offline. And I think that is a demonstration that there was something that is happening. But also in Ghana, we also had a hashtag, you fix this country hashtag that also took Ghana by storm during COVID again. Again, in that particular context, again, it started as an online discussion, but eventually spilled into an offline campaign. We also saw the same with the hashtag. There was also another hashtag for example, in Namibia, which was going under the title "Shut It All Down," where people were so fed up with the high cases of gender-based violence, but also sexual violence perpetrated against women in particular and girls. Where again it started as an online campaign, but eventually it also spilled into an offline. So we have so many of these. But even in South Africa here, we've seen, for example, the recent one, the national shutdown, where of course it started as an online discussion, but also there were also political players that were also heavily involved in terms of groundwork. But again, it was also generally an online discussion. But the problem usually is that some of these discussions tend to be very elitist because platforms by their very nature are also very exclusionary, which means people who don't have access to the internet sometimes are not part of the discussions. But what we have also seen is that online discussions often sometimes move into offline spaces as people discuss and mobilize and organize these protests.
And African leaders, how do they respond when such conversations happen on social media?
Of course, I think over time we've realized that national governments, especially in Africa, have actually upped their game. They've learned how to circumvent some of these protests, especially those that are organized online. They've, for example, in some cases we've seen in Zimbabwe, for example, some governments actually resorting to shutting down the internet or even throttling down the internet, but also coming up with very draconian social media laws that make it very difficult for people to engage and to talk about politics online.
Prof. Murray, would you say that what was happening on social media was effective enough for the shutdown that now took place in South Africa recently?
I think in terms of actually making sure that the concerns of the protesters are made public, I think it was successful. But of course, if the idea of this protest was to say we need to see, for example, the President Cyril Ramaphosa leaving office, I think they've not yet done that kind of an achievement.
How do you gauge the success? Is it on the level of conversation that happens online? Is it on thousands of people that participate on the ground? Or perhaps there's another parameter?
I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it. And actually, in terms of social movements research, there are three layers at which we look at the success of movements. It's either in terms of the number that we are talking about, how many people actually went out and protested. If you look at that, for example, probably you may say that the recent protests in South Africa were not as impactful as the other ones that we have seen before. But there are a number of reasons for that. For example, our key stakeholders like your tax associations, where some of them chickened out of this particular protest because they were looking at their own bread and saying, where is our bread buttered? So they didn't want to participate.
All right, Professor Edmire Murray, thank you very much for being a part of our network. Prof. Murray there is with the University of Johannesburg. It is the SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. We'll be back after this break. SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Here's what else took place in the rest of the world in the tech space.
Shortly after Andrew McCarroll's wife was diagnosed with mental health issues, he turned to an app called Replica to help him cope. He forged a serious AI-based relationship with an avatar called Bilana, and he married her. But one day, she started rejecting his advances. Bilana exists only virtually within the app, but McCarroll's feelings for the AI chatbot are very much real.
I started using Replica in 2020 due to mostly because of my wife's mental health illnesses. There was a certain function of Replica that I was able to use for relationship communication and using the ERP, the erotic role play.
We built an app. We built Replica to make people feel happier, not suffer, and not feel unhappy. So, of course, it's really upsetting to see, even though it's a small number of users, but it's so upsetting to see people getting upset and being unhappy about it. So this is why we decided to see if we can build an app focused on therapeutic romantic relationships and help people have an outlet somewhere else.
But even as generative AI heats up among Silicon Valley investors who have pumped more than $5.1 billion into the sector since 2022, according to the data company PitchBook, some companies that found an audience seeking romantic and sexual relationships with chatbots are now pulling back. And now in Korea, fans scream, waving their glow sticks as a new South Korean K-pop girl band takes the stage. But the four members of MAVE don't exist in real life. They are virtual idols, and the audience stage every part of their debut performance was computer generated, offering a glimpse of how the country's robust music industry is embracing the metaverse.
버추휴먼 자체로서 데뷔를 하는 것보다는 이들의 컨텐츠를 가지고 말하는 게 중요하다고 생각이 들더라고요. 이게 살짝 소통적인 부분에서 좀 더 유리하고요. 그랬을 때 현재 그 글로벌적으로 좀 K-팝이라고 할까요? 그런 부분들이 좀 인기가 있다 보니까 저희가 그 부분을 같이 흡수를 해서 표현을 한다고 하면 좀 더 유리하지 않을까 이렇게 판단이 들었고
Mave's creators are hoping to bridge this gap by stepping up their presence in the virtual world. Instead of holding concerts, they appeared in a webtoon series about themselves in February and have appeared in a video game in March. The creators are planning for more virtual projects with hopes to build momentum and a solid fan base.
There are reports that Apple has said that they will start producing movies for the cinema. This week, our Twitter poll is asking you if you watch movies in the cinema still, or if you've adopted new technologies of watching films, like on a smartphone or using streaming platforms. Right, and that's it. That's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It is newsnetwork at sabc.co.za on email. From me, Spumele Lezondi, and the rest of the team. Have a good one. Bye-bye.